Okay, welcome everyone. We are at our joint meeting between City of Morro Bay and Cayuga Sanitary District. It is Thursday, November 12th, 6 p.m. We're located at the multi-purpose room at the Community Center here in Morro Bay. Welcome. We'll call the meeting to order. For my Morro Bay side, we have 3 council members present: Christine Johnson, Noah Smuckler, myself, Mayor Irons, and Cayugas.
Cayugas all present.
Thank you. And any council or board announcements from Morro Bay? Seeing none? Mr. President? Seeing none? Okay. We'll open up for public comment for anybody who'd like to make comments not on the agenda. And then it's going to look, if there's no one out in the audience, it's going to look to Mr. Keogh. He's got an item to read into the record for public comment. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. Yesterday, Mr. Doug Clausen of the Morro Dunes RV Park visited me at the treatment plant, and he has been gathering signatures for petitions to move the treatment plant. He would have liked to have joined us at the meeting this evening, but he had a medical procedure today and he could not make the meeting. So he asked me to provide a copy of the petitions to the mayor and the board president.
Thank you. Yeah. So we have Morro Bay, Cayugas, great. And then I'll just pass that. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks. And with that, we'll move on to consent calendar. Are there any items on consent from Morro Bay that they'd like to pull? Seeing none. Nothing on consent. Cayugas?
Anyone wish to pull something? Seeing none.
Okay. I'd take a motion from Morro Bay to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion by Christine and a second by Noah. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 3-0. Cayugas?
Cayugas, same motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. And item B1. Bruce, you going to lead up on that?
Yeah, item B1 is the status report of our major maintenance and repair plan for the wastewater treatment plant. The city and the district over the last several years have budgeted money for projects that are above and beyond normal operations and maintenance. And this staff report kind of highlights some of the highlights of those projects. And I can just run through them real quickly if you would like. We did a major repair to digester number 1 this year. Actually finished it in the last fiscal year and carried a little over into this fiscal year, where we cleaned, sandblasted, and cleaned the interior of the digester, cleaned and sandblasted and coated the interior, and did a lot of piping and valving repair work. And I'm happy to say that that project came in on time and budget. We also had a chlorine contact tank improvement, and those repairs were completed on Wednesday, April 15th. That project involved bypassing the chlorine contact for a limited amount of time, approximately 12 hours, I think. And during that time period, we discharged to the ocean without dechlorination, which is a violation of the NPDES permit under which we operate. So we did report to the regional board that our total chlorine residual was over the daily maximum limit that's listed in the permit, and I have yet to hear back from the board on the status of that violation. It'll be a $3,000 fine. That's the minimum mandatory. They were aware prior to the repair work being done that we were going to do this and the method that we were using. We also contacted the the California Department of Health Services Shellfish Sanitary Division, because in the past when we've had any issues with disinfection at the treatment plant, they have shut down the oyster growers for a limited period of time, just in the odd event that bacteria could come from the outfall and get back into the bay. In this instance, they did not shut down the oyster growers, but they were very happy that they were involved in the process and the notification. We have seen some issues when we completed that repair work. We have seen some issues with the tank that I think are a byproduct of the changes we made And we have had to drain and clean that tank a number of times since April. Actually, we did it in June, July, and September to ensure our disinfection process was working correctly. We will be draining the tank again probably in the next week to 10 days, and we actually have a repair methodology that we're going to try and employ and see if we can get out of this whatever we have created. I don't know exactly what we've created, but I think I have a way to fix it. So other projects include that we rehabilitated our primary clarifiers number 1 and 2. Number 2 had most of the work done to it, but we had some corrosion on the catwalks and some of the equipment at the water line of that tank. And I'm happy to say that we were able to accomplish that work for the most part in-house. And then we brought in a coating specialist to try and put a coating on there so we can make it to the end of the run. We have some projects that are upcoming. We will be doing some valve replacement and blending valve replacement project work. That project just went out to bid on September 20th. We opened bids on the 6th, and the council and the Sanitary District Board awarded the contract to the lowest responsible bidder, Pacific Coast Excavation, in the amount of $90,238 at their meetings in October 13 and 15. So we're anticipating that we will get that project underway within the next month, and hopefully it'll take about less than a month to complete that work. We've got some work on the secondary clarifier that we need to perform. It's going to be similar to what was accomplished on the primary clarifiers. A lot of the corrosion and rust we see are happening in similar locations on catwalks and certain pieces of equipment. We were able to drain that tank recently and do a pretty thorough visual inspection and clean that tank out. It's a very difficult process to do because we can't stop the water that comes into the treatment plant. So basically we have to juggle that water, and all the water needs to go through that secondary clarifier. So we were able to shut down for about 6 hours on the 14th of October by draining and filling tanks, stacking some water in the sewer system, and I would definitely give kudos to the operational staff, Les, and the guys at the plant, because it was a very well thought out plan, and like I say, it's not easy to juggle a lot of water. We have 2 projects that we will be looking at after the new year probably, and that's going to be some work on our trickling filters, on the biofilter arms, which need to be replaced. And the other project, which we're actively working on now, is some flood control measures for the treatment plant. I think El Nino has everybody a little nervous, and we want to make sure we can keep the plant up and operational during those times. So with that, I'll be happy to open it up to questions.
Thanks, Bruce. Any questions from Morbay? Questions from Cayucas?
Any questions? Seeing none.
Okay,
Mayor Arons.
cool. All right, at this time, we'll open public comment for anybody who'd like to speak to this item. Public comment is open.
Good evening, Bill Martin. I just had one question for Bruce, and that is on the
The other base.
There we go. Thanks. Good evening again, Bill Martini. And just as far as had one question for Bruce, when you're talking about El Nino and the flood control, do you know what you're planning or when that will be in effect? Because I know that could come on us right away, and just kind of get a rough idea on that.
I'm hoping that we will have, we're looking at flood control measures on the 2 trickling filters right now, and I'm hoping that we'll have those in place by the end of December.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we're actively working on that one, and we have the same concerns.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council and the board. And any further discussion on this item? Christine?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Not a discussion item, but just a word of thanks to Mr. Keogh and his entire staff for keeping such an elderly plant working, and I appreciate that. And if you could pass it on to the staff for us, that'd be great.
Thank you. I will do that.
No? Anything? Okay, all right, good. And I think the whole board, thank you for juggling that. I could only imagine juggling the water as you were trying to describe it and doing all that. Quite an evolution. So thanks, Bruce, and your team. Cayucas?
Any other comments? Dan?
Yeah, now that I think about it, Bruce, exactly what sort of measures are you going to be trying to employ in order to keep the floodwaters out?
We have already implemented some flood control measures around buildings so that we have flood gates that we can put up against doors. We've tried to raise equipment to a level that it will be out of the floodplain, and then we're looking right now at potentially raising the block wall around the 2 trickling filters, or one of the 2 trickling filters. We're still kind of strategizing on that right now.
Great. Thank you very much. I know it's a serious issue, and there aren't any necessarily really great alternatives for you out there.
Thank you, Dan. Any other questions from Cayucas? Seeing none, Mayor Irons.
Okay, great. So this item's a receive and file, and if there's no further discussion on that, we can continue on to item C1. C1 is our presentation by Susan Slayton. This is the FY 13-14 audit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening. We do have our auditor here, Bob Crosby, who would like to present the 2013-14 audit report to the council and board.
Morning.
Hello again. You guys have been pretty busy, it seems like. This thing has been done since last November, and every time we get on the list of items to talk about, I get bumped. It seems like so. Anyway, I'm finally here, and this was a really straightforward financial statement. It pretty much the same as every year. It was kind of boring, in fact. The staff at Morro Bay has got this thing down to the point where it's stated. I mean, it's pretty much standard operating procedure to get the allocations done and that sort. So we ran into no problems, and I had no real concerns as far as how it went. So, and overall, there was only one journal entry, which is fabulous. That's what they want. They want updated financial statements for the boards throughout the year rather than just at the end of the year. So what you're getting throughout the year is good information so that you can make valid decisions. However, this financial statement will be adjusted for something that just came up last year, and that would be the new Government Accounting Standards Board Pronouncement 68. I don't know if you've heard of it. Susan has, because Morro Bay is going through it. And that's the accounting and financial reporting on pensions. And I don't know if you've heard about that. But the way they presented it to us, it was a net pension liability. That's what we were going to have to book, which everybody thought, well, this is a great idea. But all of a sudden, when you start digging into it, there's other areas of concern. They've come up with things that run outside of the assets and liabilities section of a financial statement. So a CPA goes, well, what is this? Essentially, it's combining financial statements with actuarial information from the PERS pension plan. So we're going to end up with 2 extra line items on your financial statements next year. Deferred outflows of resources, whatever that is, for deferred pensions. And then there's something under the liability section called a deferred inflow of resources. And all of this has to be adjusted. First of all, PERS has to do a actuarial analysis of the pensions plans, however many you've got. Some of these organizations have 3 or 4 of them, from what I've encountered, and you have to pay for each one separately. So I haven't even delved into this, but I do know that there will probably be a prior period adjustment for my 2014 year. That's standard. So these numbers will change for this extra liability and computation that we have to do. Also, the PERS reports are a little bit primitive now as far as gathering the information out of them. You really have to hunt and peck. And as far as the formats they want us to abide by, I've been searching the internet for quite a while because I have some other clients that go for the Financial Excellence Award, and so I have to make sure my stuff is perfect. And there is a white paper out. I don't know if you guys have found anything on that yet. So I'm an expert at it now, so I feel confident we can do that. Also, your financial statement will grow. There's a schedule of districts' proportionate share of the net pension liability and a schedule of contributions. And then also what we do is we present your financial statements in a comparative format. Essentially, PERS is not doing this for both years. They're just doing it for the latest year, which is 2015, June 30th, 2015. So what I've done in the past with other clients is if they've done a comparative financial statement format, what we do is just lop one of them off. I kind of move it off to the side for the anticipation of the next year, because you can't really do a comparative because the two financial statements aren't comparative because one doesn't have the info versus the other. At the time when we did this financial statement, the information was not available. So that's something to look forward to next year. It's not a big deal. Once you know how to do it, it's not too big a deal. It's just the unknown that's out there. And the liability, how it's going to be split as far as Morro Bay versus the JPA. So that's our biggest dilemma that's coming up. As far as the financial statements, we've provided them in the comparative format, in the same format that we've always done. So I've provided both years. Of course, the district is still financially secure because it's being funded by both entities. So my auditor's report, that thing keeps growing, and that will grow again by another paragraph next year because of this GASB 68. These things keep growing. I mean, when I first started, these were 3 paragraphs long. We had to memorize them for the CPA exam. I've got 2 CPA candidates in my office, and they're fretting over this thing. It's like, how do we understand all this stuff? This thing's 2 pages long. So things get more complicated. As we go, they get more and more complicated. So anyway, I've got my editorials on that as to why it does that, but I won't disclose those now. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at these or if they've had any questions concerning the financial statements for 2014. I understand it's relatively old news now. Everybody's waiting for the 2015. So basically, that's my report. If you have any questions, I was told to keep it rather short. So
I'll turn it over. Questions from the Morro Bay board? Seeing none? Yeah. Cayucas?
I'll defer to our board member that's an accountant. Do you have any questions, Carrie?
Yes, mine, Carrie Maffioli, I'm an accountant. What was the journal entry that you did?
that was the cash when we zeroed out the cash on the cash flow statement.
Okay.
So that was the entry that we made.
Okay.
And I prefer to do it myself rather than have the staff do it. That way we get a better idea what's going on. So, but it is a pleasure to work with the staff now. There's a lot of communication, it seems like, with Cayucas and Morro Bay, unlike it was a few years ago. So,
Good. Well,
I'm
they
happy.
look good.
So,
Thank you, Carrie. Anyone else? Seeing none, Mayor Irons.
Great. Unless we'll open it for public comment for at this point. Thank you for your report.
all right. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Barry Brannon, Morro Bay. In the financial statement, I would like to have a little better understanding. It's your note 4. It says due from members, and it says that the members, City of Morro Bay, is $71,000 to the credit, as I understand it, and $308,900 Cayucas the other way. And I don't understand that. And I wonder if you could explain it more clearly.
Thanks, Barry.
That's due to the journal entry I made. Predominantly what happened was Morro Bay would utilize their cash pooled funds to finance the JPA. And at the end of it, after we do all the allocations and allocate the cash to zero, there tends to be, well, there's usually an adjustment for Morro Bay, which can be kind of significant. This particular year was $71,000. So this is just how it's been allocated. So without showing you the spreadsheet as to how the allocation's made, I mean, we can do that if you like. So, right, unbilled invoices, all that stuff enters into this.
So I'm not sure it's satisfying the question.
Does
Can you-
Cayucas own Morro Bay, or does Morro Bay own Cayucas, or is there someone else behind the tree? I don't understand.
Okay,
Yeah.
the due from Cayucas is a receivable.
So Cayucas,
So can we, the audience isn't hearing these questions. It's kind of,
I'm
it's
sorry.
going to be kind of awkward to be able to convey all this.
I forgot the mics
Yeah,
in front of
yeah.
me. Yes, the due from Cayucas is a debit balance, which would be a receivable. And due from Morro Bay actually is a credit balance, so it's a due to Morro Bay. So that's a amount due to Morro Bay. That's just how it's come out. And this is all as a result of the allocations that are made based on flow and that sort. Did you want to add something? You look like you want to add something there.
Yeah, thank you. So at the end of the year, when we get down to June 30, and it takes us until September 30-ish or mid-October to get finished, by the time we finally do the last invoice to Cayucas, we billed it and we put it in as an accounts receivable. So it's not cash, because we don't get the money and accrue the money in at that point because there's been too much of a time lag. So we put it in as a due from Morro Bay or due from Cayucas, and then usually with Morro Bay, we'll take the money from the sewer fund and we'll fund our portion of the invoice. So that's kind of what's going on there. There's a negative cash balance because the cash hadn't been transferred in, and so that's why the cash is zeroed out. It's it's that invoice that Cayucas owes, and then it's also money. In this case, it was some money that Morro Bay had funded in excess, and so it needed to go back.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you.
All right.
I have a question.
Do we have to write a check for $380?
No, we've paid this bill. Carrie?
Now, is this the amount due from Cayucas to Morro Bay? Is this amount after Rick Kuhn has reviewed the invoices
This
and
is,
approved them?
we work in conjunction with the auditors with Morro Bay. So as far as the numbers that I'm looking at, they're also being audited by Morro Bay, their auditors. Is that the question?
No. Rick Kuhn is our manager at the Cayucas Sanitary District, and he approves all the invoices from Morro Bay, and there tends to find discrepancies in them, and they have to be adjusted. So my question is this after he has reviewed the invoices?
Right, this is after, and then we also provide a draft for both entities to look at if they have any questions, and there's also the spreadsheet that's been done as far as allocating the cost based on the flow and that sort. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
So this is after Rick has approved
Right,
the invoices?
right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Arns?
Any further comments? None? Okay, thank you. Any more questions for public comment? Seeing none, thank you. Mr. Crosby?
Thank you.
No further discussion from Morro Bay? Seeing none? Cayucas, any further discussion?
No.
Okay. And with that, we have this is just a receive and file as well.
Yes, for the audit, it is.
Okay, receive and file. And then we can move on to item C2. And item C2, Ms. Slayton, thank you.
Thank you. So this is the RFP for audit services that we issued, and we received 2 bids back. We got one from Bob Crosby, and we also got another one from Glenn Burdett and Glenn Burdett Attest Corporation. From a fiduciary standpoint, it's really my responsibility to say the lowest bidder is the one that, is the better choice. That's from a money standpoint. I'm trying to let you know that this is how you can save money. The other side of this is whether or not it's a good idea to get a fresh set of eyes on the audit. Bob's been working with us for 12 plus years now, and it may be that the board and the council want to change that out and get a new person looking at this. So with that, I'd like to have a recommendation on the auditor that you'd like to choose, and we can move forward then with the 14-15 audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And with that, any questions from Morro Bay Board? Quick question.
Thanks for bringing this forward to us, Ms. Layton. And just to remind me again, so in terms of the audits that we have in the city of Morro Bay, aside from this agreement that we have today, we have recently switched auditors for the city. Is that we have?
Yes.
And the reason we did that, if you just want to remind us a little bit of why we did that.
Well, interestingly, with that particular RFP, the auditors we chose were the lowest responsible bidders. It was also, it would have been the same situation because the auditor had been with the city for almost 9 years. And at that point, it is a good idea to change and get new eyes looking at our records and how we're doing it. We get complacent, auditors can get comfortable and complacent with us. So it's a very good idea to get a new person in.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Noah?
No questions.
Okay. Just want to make a comment to that. I think part of the other aspect of that recommendation was coincidental that they were the lowest bidder, but we did have our management partners assessment study that did a city assessment and made recommendations after they did an evaluation of city operations and made an independent recommendation on, after so many years, it's best practices to consider new auditing. I think that, I just want to throw that out there. That was part of the mix in that decision at that time.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And with that, any questions from Cayucas?
I believe, Tim, you have some comments you'd like to make?
Just briefly, can you hear me?
I think
No? Is this any better? Yes.
There you go.
They always give me the dead speaker. Susan's comments are very appropriate, and what I'm going to say dovetails nicely with them. In 2012, the legislature passed AB 1345, which put on the government code books, government code section 12410.6. It's sad that I know these things, and I only know them for tonight. That new government code section actually bears directly on what Susan said, and I'll read it so that I don't destroy it. Commencing in 2013-2014 fiscal year, a local agency shall not employ a public accounting firm to provide audit services to a local agency if the lead audit partner or coordinating audit partner having primary responsibility for the audit has performed audit services for that local agency for 6 consecutive fiscal years. So the legislature actually finally realized we better, and it had to do with Bell. I mean, it really isn't relevant to our discussion. So that's now on the books. I will also say it's not retroactive, so the years that Mr. Crosby has put in don't count. We'd start in 2013, so he would have essentially 2 years working forward. But the concept and the public policy, which you articulated beautifully, applies. It's really good to get fresh eyes on audits especially. So there is a price difference, but certainly that should be factored into the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Carmel. Any comments from the Cayucas Board? Dan Lloyd?
Yeah, I recall that when we talked about this last year, we all had kind of thought that maybe we should really go out and analyze this option and give us a chance to really look at it. Well, the numbers are a little different, 6,000 versus 8,200, if I recall correctly. So given the fact that there is legislation and I have absolutely no qualms with having Mr. Crosby do it again. I think we should probably consider maybe making a choice to move on, simply to have a fresh set of eyes and allow us to move forward under new audit regime. Just my thought for the council and the board.
Any other comments from Cayucas? I tend to agree with Dan, so if that, like to hear what the preferences are for Morro Bay.
Well, at this point, since we've got into the questions, I'd just open it for public comment at this time, and then we'll bring it back to that. Anybody for public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, bring it back for discussion. Morro Bay Board, Christine, do you have any opening comments?
Given the expert advice we've just received on the fiscal side and the legal side, I'm open to fresh eyes. I think good government requires it, and I would prefer to go with Glenn Burdett, despite the insignificant cost difference.
I would agree and note that both have very good references that are working directly with government agencies. So I think quality will be similar, and the price is negligible for a very important service.
Great, thank you. And I would concur as well. Interestingly, going through this exercise as a council for our own auditing services helps me, and I think probably helps the rest of the council in coming to the decision as well. So thanks to your council, Mr. Carmel, and your comments, and I would agree as well. So it seems like we could, Cayucas, if you want to add any more comments.
No, I think we'd be willing to put forward a motion.
Yes, I'll make a motion that we hire Glenn Burdett for the audit services in the foreseeable future.
Second.
Okay, let me clarify, that was for the foreseeable future. Is there a time, do we want to contract this for, a time period?
Well, your time period will be for 2014-15, and then it goes through, it could go as long as 2018-19. Now, one of the experiences that I had with the new audit firm that we have is that they relook, or they take a new look at 13-14 to make sure the base year is good. So they're going to revisit 13-14, which will fit in with what Mr. Carmel said, that there's, it doesn't go back, but the auditor will. They'll look and make sure they have a good base they're working from, then they'll go ahead and perform the audit for 14-15.
Okay, so I think the motion should read.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I have to recuse myself from this. That's what they told me, because I've had Glenn Burdett as my accountant for 20 years. So I think I need to leave the room.
Tim?
If you have a conflict of interest, you just announce your conflict and you'll have to leave the room. I know it's always stale to ask someone to do the room immediately.
Okay, Dan, I just wanted to clarify, or Tim, that the motion should read for the 2014-15 year audit.
And right, and that framework was set up in the RFP, so we're really just implementing what the RFP said.
Okay, very good. With that, Dan, does that work for you on your motion?
Yeah. Just reading here, it looks to me like their proposals for 15, 16, and 17, with options to renew for 5 years, ending in June 30th, 2018. That's in the first paragraph of their letter dated August 13-1 of 2015. So I could rephrase my motion. And then I think perhaps the question would be, perhaps for discussion, would be just how far do we really want to go with this? I don't know that we need to go. I'd probably go to, considering where we are, through 17 for sure. Well, it says ending June 30th, 2018 and 19. I think that's a fair amount of time to allow them to become familiar, exercise good judgment, and educate us on our process. So I would vote that we, or make a motion that we hire Glenn Burdett, certified public accountants, to perform the audit services for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2015, 16, and 17, with options to renew for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018 and 19.
Okay, is that acceptable to the second?
Second. Yes.
Okay, then that's our motion. Any other discussion? All those in, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had one question for Tim. Saying that, after the minimum amount of time, we want to revisit this again, can Crosby rebid and come back into play?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, he could apply now. He did, and he'd
Right.
still qualify. But after you break the consecutive year streak,
Yeah,
he
I'm just
requalifies.
curious, that's all.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Mayor Arns.
Great. Morro Bay, same motion.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, great. We have a motion by Councilmember Smuckler, second by Councilmember Johnson. Any further discussion?
Yes, I do. I think it is good practice to bring the accountant or the auditor on board for more than 1 year. I don't think that they would be making decisions based on a future contract for this amount of money. I think their professional integrity and standards and reputation are more important to them. But still, it is good to let them know that we're with them and we want them to look really hard at our books and not be afraid to criticize and give us insights on how to make it better. So I think the multiple years will give them that time and ability to delve deeper. And I would also like to ask that our collective staffs do send a note to Mr. Crosby and his company and firm, thanking them for all the great work they've done for us.
Nicely done. And with that, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 3-0. Okay, great. That moves us on to item D, which is a schedule of next joint meeting and future agenda items. And just wanted to bring up the next meeting schedule and for the board consider a future agenda item at our next. Oh, Shirley, yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. I'm just going to pause. Pardon me, Shirley. Thanks for coming back. So at our next meeting, I'd like to discuss an agenda item to discuss the beneficial use of land options, opportunity, equity interest, and responsibility of the wastewater treatment plant after the use that it's been discontinued and during its transition out of use. So I'd like to bring that agenda item forward for our next meeting. So looking for consensus on that.
I think I would, but would you mind rereading it a little bit slower?
Sure.
Thanks.
So, a future agenda item to discuss the beneficial use of land, options, opportunity, equity interest, and responsibilities of the wastewater treatment plant property after use of the plant is discontinued and as it's transitioned out of use. Okay. So we have support from
Yes, I would support that.
Noah? No, looks like we got council support for that. Cayucas, any comments? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a comment.
Okay, good.
So,
Right, excuse me. Dan?
Yeah. I brought this up, I think, at the last JPA meeting we had in Cayucas, where I thought it was pretty important to at least get that out on the table. If you could, at that time, it would be nice to kind of know what you're doing with your LCP update and how that maybe figures into it, and just kind of an overall perspective on what there might be in terms of options or where you're heading with your local coastal plan update, and just how it might, that meeting.
Absolutely, and I think it'd be great during this maybe to have Mr. Kuhn and Mr. Livet, kind of exchange those types of thoughts as that agenda item is moving forward based on this discussion. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
it'd be great to have some advanced conversation amongst our representative boards so we're coming up to speed with options and alternatives.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. Thank you. Good idea.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Mayor Arns.
And with that, I think we've got our next scheduled meeting, Thursday, February 11th, 2016 at 6 p.m. And unless there's any closing remarks, the meeting would be adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.